Hello, Tommy. Can you hear us, Tommy?
Yep, I can hear you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, Mike.
Morning all.
Hi.
Kind of at an angle right now as we continue to work the technical issues that we have here, but I know it's 9:12 and we want to go ahead and get moving real quickly. Those who are online and those who are us here. We're on the island of Maui, everyone. It's a beautiful day. I landed early this morning, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, Martha Tornay.
Here.
Ronald Ibarra. Here. Mike Town.
Here.
Mark Browning. And then Mark Patterson. Here. All right, so 5 of us are here. Four of us are here. Okay. Commissioners, can we look at our minutes of the May 10th, 2024 meeting? If you have any questions or you want some discussions, I'll take a motion to accept.
So moved.
I second.
It's been moved by Martha and seconded by Ron that we accept the minutes for the 2024 June 20th, May 10th meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say same. Okay, motion passed. Thank you, everyone. At this time, right here.
Good.
As we look at our agenda, I'm going to open up for public testimony.
On agenda items.
On the agenda items. Is this it? George, is this it? That's on?
We don't have cat? Oh my God.
I'll give a few minutes for anyone to reply or raise a hand. We don't have anybody here we're at Maui, University of Hawaii, Maui classroom. There's no one here. I'm seeing no hands digitally on the camera system here. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Good morning, Tommy. How you doing?
Pretty good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We go ahead and give you the floor. Thank you.
You ready for me to give an update?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So a couple of things real quick. We have a BCRC graduation of 18 new corrections officers, class 23-04, this Friday on the 21st. I won't be there. I'll be headed to DC that day. I have the same flight that day. But that's the third class we held this year. We plan to hold 6 classes this year and 6 classes next year to kind of get ahead of our attrition rate. Whereas in previous years, we held only 2 to 3 classes. We're going to hold 6 this year and next year, and we'll keep that up. We have a major recruitment efforts underway. As you guys may have known, we just recently advertised in the movie theaters, all movie theaters statewide, commercial that will be shown as part of the intermission and also part of the previews up through August of this year. We did recent TV ads, as you guys might have seen. We're doing radio spots. We have gone to military transition centers. We already advertised on the bus. We're negotiating with the rail to put posters on the rail system as well. We hold job fairs, and at those job fairs, we hold interviews for emergency hires, and we can hire on the spot. And we've been visiting colleges and universities statewide to try to fill our 400 plus ACO vacancies. We have asked DHER to consider, because of our amount of vacancies, a couple of proposals. One would be to look at returning the step movements to the ACO class of work that was given up back in the late 90s for a lump sum payment. To look at recruitment as a hiring bonus, where the person would receive half of the bonus within 30 days of completion of the BCRC reporting to their unit, their facility, and the other half upon completion of their probationary period. Another incentive we put forward would be to consider providing longevity pay for those people that have been in corrections for 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years. And that would be based on them coming to work at least 80% of the time of their regular shift. And another proposal internally we're considering, providing we have the resources available, is on a first come, first served basis, beginning in October through the middle of November, allow corrections officers to cash in up to 2 weeks of their accrued vacation. They would then have that money in time for Christmas for their families. That's only if we have the resources available. We also would like to see that the ACO salary be raised. Effective 1 July, the salary for an ACO coming out of the academy would be $64,240. Because of the cost of living here and what we're asking the ACOs to do, and we think that the salary should be, because compensation should be higher than that. Considering if you tried to buy a condominium, you're looking at $300,000 to $500,000, and you can't do that on $64,240. So those are incentives we looked at. We're looking at. The other thing we did recently was we reduced the in-academy time from 11 weeks to 8 weeks, and the ACOs would finish the 3 weeks as part of an OJT program while they're in their initial probationary period at the facilities. So we looked at the curriculum and kept the most critical classes and kept them in the academy. And some of the other things the training NCOs would do at the facilities, the training sergeant. We did a cost-benefit analysis, and we came up with, if we have 6 recruits on the neighbor islands, at least 6, and we would take the academy to them. We were losing some applicants because particularly younger male and female, because they didn't want to leave their families for 11 weeks to come to Oahu. So we take the academy to them. They get to go home at the end of each day. We then would fly the instructors back home on the weekend so they could spend time with their family and back up to begin the next week again. So as you can see, we're trying to think outside the box to try to address recruitment without lowering standards, and also provide appropriate levels of compensation to the ACO workforce. Other than that, we're continuing with our transition from the Department of Public Safety to Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So we do have a contract in place with Wilmer Community College for trauma-informed care, voluntary for corrections officers. That MOU is in place, and the funding was provided last year. We are looking at a pet recovery project for Women's Community Correctional Center. We just finished a job fair at Women's Community Correctional Center last year. We had 35 vendors come up. I think Kara was there. We also had a culinary arts graduation at Waiava Correctional Facility the same day. Our goal is to have 2 job fairs a year at each facility for the inmates transitioning. So it's out there, what services are out there. That's part of strengthening our wraparound reentry services. And right now we are looking at going out to contract for additional clean and sober beds and navigator services for female offenders across the state. C is done. We would look at transferring all of the female offenders, detainees from OCCC to female detainees. Women's will become a true hybrid prison jail where they would have everything from, they will hold everything from pretrial detainees to convicted felons, and they would have work furlough out of that facility. So the dormitory, should that point, we've already started the planning process to transition females over in 35 female detainees at OCCC at any given time. We're looking at, when we do the transfers, we do 20 to 25 at a time, so it's manageable for WCCC, because we will be moving staff from OCCC to handle the new influx at Women's Intake Service Center. Women's didn't normally do intake services, they're going to do intake. We're going to move additional medical staff there, and we are now looking at working with the healthcare administrator, providing them additional space within the facility, not just in the new dormitory, but additional space within the facility to expand medical services for the inmate population. And then the last thing I have is we're coming along with the sensory cells for both Women's and Halava, the infirmaries. The sensory cells, we're working with Tia Hartsock from the State Wellness Director to provide a more humane surroundings for the inmates that are terminally ill that we have in our custody. We just had a long-term female inmate pass away last week at WCCC. That's all I have, subject to the questions from the commission.
Tommy, just a few questions. You know, the point where your training academy is at right now, what's the maximum amount of new recruits they're able to train?
In any given class?
Yeah, if you had the numbers.
We can train up to 40 per class. When we had COVID, 40 to 45. When we had COVID outbreak, we were running classes day and night to maintain spacing, but we can put 40 to 45 in a large classroom. We've been averaging about 25 to 30 per class. This class is graduating Friday. Unfortunately, we had 22, but 4 of them couldn't pass the COPAT test. So we recycled them to the next class in the hopes that they made a lot of progress with respect to their physical fitness, but we couldn't lower the standard to accept them. So we put them in the next class. They all agreed to go to the next class. And then we can also hire them as emergency hires in the interim as well. And give you the breakdown. Well, apparently I can't. I have it here somewhere. So as we go along, I'll try to find it. But I just looked at the draft BCRC graduation brochure. Here we go. So of the breakdown, there are 6 going to go to Halawa Correctional Facility, 4 are going to go to the Hawaii Community Correctional Center.
Mark?
Yes.
Weeks in the classroom and 4 weeks in the facility, or 3 weeks in the facility. How can you ensure that the facility training officer is in fact
training sergeants? We are re-centralizing them back to TSD so they can get certified in all the different subjects. Okay. And then we will bring two training sergeants to do the training at the facilities for that 3 weeks that they need to do. In addition to that, the reason why we are centralizing the training cadre again is because if a facility needs training done, we can send a strike package, if you will, of 3 or 4 training sergeants to the facility and catch the staff on every shift, first, second, and third shift. So we're looking at consolidating our efforts so that we can take then and kind of a force multiplier. Instead of one facility having 1 training sergeant, we can send 3 or 4 to one facility to do everybody on all the shifts.
I do appreciate that you're also having a way to reward those who have been with us a long time for their continued service, because I can imagine that it can get discouraging to some of the longtime staff when they see new recruits get bonuses and they're like, hey, I've been here forever, I don't have a bonus. One other question I have is, as OCCC, as they move the women out, I believe in the past you talked about maybe using some of the space would be available for expanding the medical unit and the infirmary. Is that going to be possible at OCCC?
Yes, that's what we're doing. We'll be expanding. We're actually going to move the medical unit from where you guys last saw it to module, I forget the module, but where the female's moving out of, one of those areas will become an infirmary. And so they're going to have more, whenever you like, to take a look as we try to build it out. We're going to start purchasing the equipment and the beds and stuff we need fairly soon so we can have it ready to start.
College, is there any incentive for ACOs to go take that course?
No, we didn't have any funding for an incentive. We just got the funding from the legislature.
Financial incentive. Yeah. So they'll be more encouraged to take the courses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I just have one last question. Tell me, just, so I can understand your, as we move the jail or the pre-trialers to Kailua at the WCCC, when we were in Hilo last month, very impressed with the staff there and their intake process, with the limited space that they had and the amount of officers that was in there doing, the intake process. And myself familiar with Module 5 and what they do at OCCC. Has women's security staff been trained, or did I hear you correctly when you say you're going to move some of that knowledge over temporary until they can get to a level of being able to do the intake?
You know, as part of the planning process, Warden Galanta at WCCC and Warden Schnell at OCCC have had their respective SMEs train the staff. So the women's facility staff will be trained in intake process, and it will be overseen a little bit by OCCC initially because they have the SMEs, to be honest with you. They've been doing it for decades. And so that's already underway. The training has already taken place. We've already decided where the intake will be because we have the new structures going up. And so I think we're going to be prepared. We're going to have some hiccups like in any operation. But I think because we had time to plan this out and the two wardens get along so well and the staff, it helped us get this done fairly quickly. And it's not just that, it's logistics like increasing the number of supplies for feminine items for the female offenders, making sure we transfer all those things from OCCC to women's, making sure that women's have additional money in the budget to purchase additional clothing, underwear, all those kind of things. All that was part of the planning process for this transition over.
Go ahead, Mike. You have a question? Thank you, Tom.
Sure. Tommy, thank you as always. I'm going to defer my concern to Kara, but I did appreciate hearing about what went on at Women's. Somebody was in hospice, and there's questions raised there about compassionate furlough. And also, you don't need to answer this, Tommy, but I think it's going to come up about another death at Halava on Tuesday and what happened there. I just got a text about that. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I think I'll defer that to our coordinator here, who's here. Is that all right? Is that a good way to? Are you going to be around for her report, Tommy?
Well, I already provided the coordinator with a copy of all Priority 1 reports. Those are not necessarily releasable to the public, but she has the information regarding that particular incident at Halava.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Just one last thing, Cara, if you check your email, I addressed the issue of the volunteer training. I sent it to you and George. So I think that should cover it. So in short, for the volunteer training, I think a question came up when you guys visited HCCC. So there was 2 trainings held recently. One was on March 13th, 2024. The other was May 8th, 2024. We had 16 participants in the March 13th training, only 3, however, in the May 8th training, even though we give about 30 days notice before we do the training. The next training, we're expecting about 25 people. That training was going to be held on November 19th of this month, but it had to be pushed back to July 10th. And that was because Kenneth, who is the CS1 Kenneth Rowe at HCCC, had to be detached to Kulani because the warden there gave us short notice for his retirement. Benjamin Catrice retired at the end of May. So we needed to have Kenneth detached up to Kulani to be the acting warden while we go through the recruitment process to fill that position permanently. And so one of the case managers at WCCC who will be TAing to Kenneth's position will be coordinating this July 10th training along with Agnes in our corrections program services. She's the volunteer administrator and trainer statewide.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Thank you, Tommy.
Okay.
No other questions from the commissioners? We'll move on to our next agenda item. Some of these next few items on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, is also on the website in the Oversight Coordinator's report. But in regards to the legislative priority updates, it's just since the last meeting, we have received the worksheets.
Sure. So the update is that the Senate and House passed the final version of HB 1800, and in that included the $462,000 funding for the commission, and that would be embedded within the Attorney General's budget. And so the next and final step, we're just waiting for the governor to sign that, but our funding is there within the budget bill.
And this funding is the amount that was approved by the AG for us to request. So the legislature did not do any cuts. The governor's office and BNF did.
Correct.
From our original request, they cut it.
Okay, any questions on that?
So that's great news.
Yeah, it's great news. We're up and running.
That's what we're really working toward this year. So we're just waiting for that one final step.
And can I just bring up one other thing with the legislature? We do have to start preparing for our package for the coming legislature.
Yes.
And we're going to reintroduce the one about extending the time of the term of the oversight coordinator, and we had two other things in that. And so anything that we think we got to bring to your attention, Mark, if you have any ideas of what we should be introducing, because we should be working on that very shortly.
Those legislative asks is probably due by September, Martha? Is the
The governor's office, if we go through the governor's process, yes.
Yeah, okay.
The first drafts would be due about then to the AGs. But, again, we can always, if we don't get what we want through the governor's office, we can always go directly to the legislature.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner, on the legislative updates? Okay, moving on. A few weeks ago, there was a summit put on by the Hawaiian Wellness and Resiliency Office called Kaʻahumanu Avenue, and it's really the beginning of the movement. As you all folks know, that the governor announced that we were becoming a trauma-informed care state, which is an important announcement as he begins to bring everyone in terms of one of the reasons for the Office of Wellness and Resiliency of being created was to try and organize all the departments in their efforts of creating trauma-informed care programming. What is the key for that is not just for the clientele that they serve, but within the workplace itself. And so this particular conference was based on the wellness in the workplace. And there is a sheet that we brought back from the conference that we posted on the website entitled Wellness in the Workplace, and really just a mini guide for building a resilient workforce. So if we're going to go out there and say that we're going to provide trauma-informed care programming and services to our people, we want to make sure that we have a model of working among ourselves in our work environment so that we can role model and show the staffing that we care about them as well. And basically it's a mini guide on team building, breaks in breathing, financial well-being, wellness resources, regular check-ins, employee assistance, health and wellness, collaboration. And just as an example, I'm the only one still in the state system. We're getting a lot of emails now because everybody in the Office of Youth Service all the way down to our operations staff and correctional officers all have emails now. And there's constant information coming down on a weekly basis on wellness. There's organizations of walks and units challenging each other on health issues and activities and whatnot. So it's really interesting to see this thing beginning to build up as the departments get more focused on the wellness of their work environments and their staff. So that's the beginning of this movement of how we intend to become a trauma-informed care state. And I know that our 3 staff are working on that as well. And part of it is the commission is, of course, part of the Attorney General's efforts as well. So anything else you want to add to that, Carol?
It's just a great event. So it'll be an annual summit. Yep. And Mark was on one of the panels there really talking about how we can move forward as a trauma-informed state. And the summit itself exemplified that, like the energy of the summit, all of the activities, it was thoughtful and really aligned with the principles. So it was a great event. I'm grateful for the invite. We all are.
Trauma-informed care also must be passed on to our employees in corrections because it is a very stressful environment. So I'm looking forward to in the future if Tommy can help us understand how trauma-informed care is going to be available to our staff when they go through particularly traumatic experiences in corrections.
Okay. Mike, you want to add anything in terms of the governor's announcement on the trauma-informed care state?
Yeah, two brief things, Mark, and thank you. I worked hard on this with the judges over the years and wrote some articles on it. And the bottom line, I'm going to present on it tomorrow to the bar, to the access to justice at the law school. But the bottom line is an executive order has the force and effect of law. It's not just aspirational. It's not just dreaming. It's the real deal. And all you have to do is look at the data around the country on compassion fatigue, burnout, all those kind of things that happen. So I think it's a big deal. It's worth reading. We should put it on our maybe on our website if it's not already there. I have it right here in front of me. So I think it's really important that we address it and make it real, and certainly hold ourselves accountable, and certainly in corrections and rehabilitation. So I thank you for presenting on that. I did a study of some 500 judges years ago, and most judges were not aware they could burn out in 3 to 5 to 7 years. Most judges were not aware that there were techniques to balance it other than golf and alcohol. And also most judges were not aware that they're pretty simple techniques to address it. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments from the commissioners? Just one last thing. We have developed, I'm going to say at least this legislative session, it might have been before, but we did make formal introductions between Christian and Tia, that we wanted to get involved with whatever she had. So we are having those conversations so that we can support Tia in her efforts to bring the state agencies together. So I'm excited about how we move forward with that. Let's move on to our next item on our agenda. Overview of the Hawaii Community Correctional Center Facility Tour Report. Kara.
Okay, so we toured HCCC last month.
Explain who toured and why.
Sure.
Because only 2 people got it.
So Mark and I toured HCCC last month, and a few of the other commissioners weren't able to attend.
I had COVID.
They were not well, and also we had inclement weather that specific day, which Mark and I got caught in. Unfortunately, we don't have a photo of that for the report, but maybe Mark can share more about that at the end. So we toured last month, and I'm just going to briefly go over some of the findings and recommendations from our report, but you can find the full report on the website. So we toured the main jail, and so we started at Punahele, and what really the highlights, or at least the key things that Punahele is, it's a special needs housing unit. So people with acute mental illness, people on lockdown, people with severe health problems, new admissions are all held within that unit. And the design capacity in that unit is 22. So there's 22 cells that are used for housing there. And also there is in that unit a multi-purpose room, and people are also housed in there. So I'm sharing this because I think the key takeaway from that unit in particular was the population versus the capacity. So there were 76 people total in that area, which is designed for 22. So one of the largest issues that we saw at HCCC, and this is not new, but we do want to highlight it again, is the overpopulation there. There are just too many people for the capacity at the facility, and that is very true in the Punahele unit. So in addition to the housing units and the multipurpose room, there are also people housed in a corridor there. So there's like a medical corridor with a few cells they're not really designed for long-term housing, but again, because of the number of people in the facility, they're being used for that. So that's an issue within that corridor part of the Punahele housing. And then there's also a modular unit that's was originally designed for COVID housing there. And that is also overpopulated, although we don't have a specific capacity for that because, again, when it was put in, it was designed for short-term housing. What we found there is there was a cell, I'd say probably 2 people should be in the cell, and we had, in one of them, there was 5 women. So that, what that actually looks like in the facility is a 3-tiered bunk and then 2 people with mattresses on the floor. And so we were able to speak with people in custody there, and their biggest concerns were around the overcrowding and the amount of time that they had spent in that unit. There's also a lot of maintenance issues in that unit that need to be cared for. Anything else about that unit, Mark? That's good.
I do want to bring up that unit opened in 1978. It is the oldest building on the property. And in that unit, the cells are much smaller than you find in the other facilities. Most facilities have 80 square foot cells, and these range in size from about 58 square feet to 62 square feet. So that they're much smaller than other cells in other facilities.
Yeah, they're really designed for one person, and when we were there, it's 2 to 3 people per cell. The next housing unit we went to was Komohana, and that holds the pretrial general population. There's 32 cells. It's really designed for 64 people, and there were 83 people in custody there. So it was 2 to 3 people per cell. We went around, we spoke with people in custody there. No one had any serious concerns when we were on the unit. One tier was out watching TV, sitting at shared tables. The other unit was in their cells, and then they switched. So they were, both tiers were getting out of cell time.
I have another question. When we visited Komohana last time, a number of the showers were not working.
So they are working now, yes. And then the other final unit at the main facility that we went to was Wainuiui, and that is a unit. It includes 2 dormitory style units. It's designed for 40 people, and there were 54 people in there. There's a sentence side and then a pretrial side. And again, we spoke with people in there in custody, asked what was, how they were doing. No serious concerns there either. Most people were congregated around the TV. They had books. They were reading. So that was at an occupancy rate of 135. So we thought it was important to break down the occupancy rate in the different parts of the jail because it is really different. So in Punahele, it's much higher, around over 250%, and then in some of the other units, it's closer to 100. Okay, so the highlight of the tour, maybe I can call it that, was there is a new housing unit at HCCC that will be opening soon. It has it has cells, so it has 24 cells. It's designed for 48 people, and it will be a great relief to the facility, but what I wish to highlight is it's not going to resolve the overcrowding issue. So even as we add the capacity of this new facility, the whole capacity at that main jail site would be 174, and at the facility in that same area right now is 237 people. So yes, it will be helpful, and we need to do more in terms of population reduction there. The other thing I wanted to highlight here is one other aspect that we looked at here is we looked at the roster, and I really wanted to analyze a breakdown of numbers in terms of who is actually in the jail. And when we were looking at this, some things that were evident is that out of the total population, we had 166 people who were there pretrial for felonies, and then 16 people who were there pretrial for misdemeanors. And when I looked at the timeline, that was 81 people in custody pretrial for more than 6 months. So I include that because when we think about population reduction ideas, of course we think about the front end in terms of diversion and deflection, but also you can look at the jail back end, which is either, which is moving people through the system if they are found guilty and then moving them out if they're not. Okay, one last thing. I just want to highlight that there's some really great things going on at HCCC. Their mental health team there has really worked with the 704 evaluation process, and that determines a defendant's mental fitness to stand trial. And they have drastically reduced the wait time for this. So from something like 9 months to a few weeks. So I really want to highlight the innovation there and the thoughtfulness and the dedication of that team. And then also the staff there are working under really difficult conditions in terms of understaffing, overpopulation, facility design, and they are dedicated. They're showing up to work. Even during our talk stories, they're always thinking of solutions. They were, kind and courteous to us during our visit. So I wanted to highlight that as well. And also that when we do recommend things and connect with the warden there, there might not always be a solution, but he is always listening to the commission and looking for ways to implement our recommendations. So now I'll move right to the recommendations section. So the biggest issue, and you could probably see this through with some of the things I highlighted, is overcrowding. So what we have here is thinking about system-wide efforts to reduce overcrowding. So there's some diversion initiatives in the Third Circuit, and our favorite judge from the Third Circuit is part of them. So of course the commission supports the furtherance of those. The other piece that I wanted to highlight here is that pretrial time and the number of people that are in the jail pretrial. So there's really an opportunity here for all the different justice system stakeholders in the Third Circuit to look at individually how they can decrease those times, and also collectively how we can work together to get people out of that jail in a timely manner. And then finally, when I was talking to different community partners and also thinking about these diversion efforts, when we think about diversion, we need to know who we're diverting. So I requested here a population analysis in terms of looking at the demographics, the mental health and substance abuse needs of the population, different health indicators, housing data, employment, and income status, all of these things that we know would help successfully and safely divert people. We need to know exactly what the needs are so we can figure out what community providers are available, what beds are available, where are the gaps. So really looking system-wide at what we have, what we need, and also linking people with what is available. So that's that for in terms of the population reduction efforts. The second thing that we noticed there is that there's a lot of idle time. So the facility has a high population, and there is a lot of free time for people. So what our recommendation here is to increase programming to pre-COVID levels and then expand it. So during COVID, a lot of programming shut down, and that is leading to the idle time. So looking at ways to increase programming and increase opportunities for people in custody there. And that relates to something that Tommy shared before in terms of volunteer training opportunities. People need to go through this volunteer training to actually get into facilities and offer programs. So Tommy sent us that information about when it has occurred and when it's occurring. So that will really help move people in so they're able to offer different programming opportunities and decrease that idle time, which is also helpful. And maybe, Mark can speak to this too for management of the population when people are busy, when they're doing something from that perspective too. Okay, 3 more things. Hang in there with me. I hope I'm not talking too much. So,
Go ahead. This is a good report.
okay. The new housing unit. So, like I said, the new housing unit. We want the facility to think about the ways to optimize this housing unit to better serve all the populations and the staff. So one thing that we put in here is there's a lot of maintenance issues that are required at the facility. So potentially using this new unit as temporary housing. So some of those other maintenance issues can be fixed in the other units. And then also when we were on site with staff and talk stories, many staff recommended to us making this unit a mental health unit. So it would be a dedicated space for all the mental health, all the people with acute mental health needs at the facility. So currently that number is 45, and this unit would hold 48 people. So if that, in terms of that consideration, it would help decrease overcrowding, especially in Punahele, and create more space for women, because there also needs to be a dedicated space for women in that facility. And then we think that will also assist in the overpopulation problem, although, again, it will not fully resolve it. And
Do we know the head count of the women?
So there are 30 women at the annex, and then 10 women in the different elements of Punahele on the day of our visit. So that's altogether around 40.
Did we visit the annex?
No, we didn't because of the weather.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, 2 last things. So, and these will be quick. One recommendation is to expedite the Punahele front office lobby remodel. So because of that remodel, one of the issues, well, 2 things. The front office is a tent, so there's no like front gate right now. A tent is being used as that remodel is happening, and it also limits staff restrooms. So when you pull up to the facility, there's 3 porta potties out front, and staff are using those along with 1 restroom in the facility. That is also mixed use, so it's used for people in custody, not for them to use the restroom, but for other, searches or UIs, things like that. So we really want to expedite staff having a proper restroom and a number of restrooms that will support the number of staff at the facility. And then finally, expand furlough utilization. So Mark and I did not have the opportunity to go to the annex because we got caught in the most severe Hawaiian storm, at least that I've seen so far. We sat on our plane ride home. It looked like we had just went swimming before our flight. So we didn't have the opportunity to go there, but there are only 31 men in the furlough program there. And so we really want to see more system movement. And I know system-wide, Tommy and his team are looking at security classification. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece is seeing if we can move people who are already who are already in the system at a community level status. And I know that's not the only determination for furlough, but it's one of them. Seeing who else we can move there so we can utilize furlough and step down and transition opportunities for people before they return to the community.
Any questions for Kara?
I just want to make a comment about the population analysis. While this would be very useful, I think it's something that we should consider if we can go into partnership with the department and get some outside help to do that, because the elements you have highlighted here are not in the system. So corrections would not be able to pull out what were their housing prior to coming in, what's their income, what was their work that they were doing. But it's information that both of us, that the department can use and we can use. So Tommy, if you're still listening, I'm hoping in the future this is something that maybe we can apply for together as maybe a federal grant or another grant from a foundation to be able to do such an analysis.
What was the specific analysis again?
She has a population analysis and the
Oh,
thing
okay.
that Kara
Yeah.
is
Okay.
listing,
My bad.
has things like key health indicators, housing data, employment, income status, and a lot of that stuff is really not available in the information system. So it's not readily available for
Yeah.
the department to provide us with that information.
Yeah.
But I do think that would help both of us in our goals to have that kind of analysis. So I'm hoping we can go in a partnership and get some outside funds
Yeah.
to be able to do this.
Great.
Real quick.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Comment on this regarding the overcrowding and page 7, talking about the justice partners. This is the big one because the judge, and Tommy has been saying it a while back. The judge commits the inmate or defendant on bail status based on the bail study, which is prepared by the ISC folks. And the defendant, if cannot post bail or cannot be released, will be contributing to the overcrowding in the population. But also, once the defendant is committed to jail on the bail status, then it involves the public defender, the prosecutor, and the courts. Because the court has a Rule 48, which says a person must be tried within 6 months from the date of arrest or the filing of the complaint, whichever is sooner, excluding certain periods. And so once the defendant is in jail, based on the court's initial order, and is in there more than 6 months, the defense attorney should move for dismissal of the charges. Could be with or without prejudice. The prosecutors sometimes move to dismiss because they don't have enough information, but by then it's beyond 6 months or more than 6 months. So we're talking about the defense counsel moving to dismiss to get their clients out after 6 months if they're not tried. We're talking about the prosecutor can move to dismiss after 6 months if they don't have the facts or the evidence to bring the defendant to trial. The court can have a status conference after seeing that, managing its docket, because once the defendant has been arraigned, that case is assigned to a judge, a trial judge, and the judge could also have status conference and calling the prosecutor and the defense counsel together and say, what's the status of this case? The person's in there a long time. Either you try him or you dismiss it. And so it takes, prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the court. And, and there was talk about also, I think it was the last session, Martha, which I suggested regarding the update of bail studies once they're incarcerated. And, Tommy testified and we agreed finally on 6 months update. And that's the reason why I said was 6 months. The 6 months update would tip the defense counsel off and the prosecutor off and the judge off that this person is coming up for 6 months. We got to do something. So I think, like it's pointed out here, the justice partners should all be involved. And my further suggestion to this is basically as to the process, the section that talks about the justice partners, I think the commission should send this to the Chief Justice, because I was looking at our monthly report to the Chief Justice, the governor. We don't have, the appropriate, section for the appropriate department, Chief Justice or the governors like that. And I think this is important enough because this would be system-wide, not only the Third Circuit, but it could happen in the whole state, regarding the prosecutor, courts, public defenders working together and reducing the population. But, the bottom line is if the judge doesn't let them out, the defendant doesn't get out. Even after sentencing, sometimes, we get mixed up. Even after, parole, probation, retake, it all ends enough information to make a reasonable decision that protects the public, would protect the individual constitutional right to a speedy trial. So I suggest we send this section to the Chief Justice.
Will do.
That's my
I
say.
agree.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it. Any no further other questions? Mike, any questions? not, we'll move on to the Oversight Coordinator's report.
Y'all didn't get enough of me yet, yeah?
No?
Yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna do some high-level updates for the coordinator report. So the first piece is that I have one death in custody to report on. There is another death in custody that we'll report on next month. I just got that notice yesterday, and that was after the report was complete. So that will be next month. But on Wednesday, June 12th, at 2:20 p.m., a person in custody, female, 78 years old, was found unresponsive in the infirmary at the Women's Community Correctional Center. Medical staff contacted hospice, and the individual pronounced deceased by hospice staff at 3:37 p.m. This person was in long-term hospice care at the facility. So I want to briefly respond to Commissioner Towns' comment before. I had talked to WCCC staff a few visits ago about a potential compassionate release for this woman, and they actually had already looked into it. And the only other placement for her was the state hospital, because there was no other family or, and this is what I was told, or place for her to go, and that they, where she was comfortable, and so it was decided that they wouldn't pursue any compassionate release for that case. So I did talk to them about it, and that's what they told me on site at the facility.
I'm just confused. The state hospital, so she's a mentally ill inmate?
Not, they said the only other appropriate placement for her would have been a hospital.
A hospital.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. This was a while ago that I had the conversation with them, but I did talk to them about it, and they had been looking into it, but felt that this was the best placement, and there was no one pursuing the compassionate release claim. Okay. So the other high-level highlights, Tommy talked about this, but there was a WCCC resource fair that I went to last week. I'm not going to say too much about this, but it was a really great event. I think there were almost 40 service providers there connecting with the women. And what I thought was really great about WCCC was all of the women had the opportunity to attend. So it wasn't just women who were nearing release, it was everyone. And the leadership there said, we really want them to be thinking about release and thinking about what it will look like for them. So everyone at the facility had the opportunity to go. Also, Commissioner Town and I attended a community of practice meeting with the University of Hawaiʻi Community Design Center, and they're working with the Department of Corrections to envision a new jail and new concept for OCCC. And at this meeting, we really talked about what the mission of the jail could be, its purpose, programming opportunities, population scenarios. But it was, and Bob Merce was there too. So, okay, legislative update. Mark already provided that. So then I just want to briefly share what we're working on at the office right now. So our main priority is still our staffing report. We surveyed staff here in the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. We went to each facility post to post at the beginning of the year, and then Mark and Kristen followed up with staff talk stories. And so right now we're putting all that information together. We have the results of the surveys and we have the results of the talk stories. And once we have a few minutes to breathe, we'll finish the report.
Real quick, on the staff surveys,
Yeah.
you know, there was an intent to try and issue a report by the end of May. And we were no longer able to keep that deadline because the baby came early.
Kristen gave birth.
Most of the staff survey report and stuff is all in Kristen's head. And so we kind of delayed a little, but we're still working on it while she's on maternity leave. But I do want to say, in case those of you have questions, because you did hear us say that we were going to have it at the end of May, and baby had other plans. So that's where we are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so then in terms of in the office, our other two high priorities are our reentry report. So that specifically relates to our mandate in terms of reviewing the comprehensive offender reentry program and ensuring the opportunity for timely release at people's minimums. We submitted a big data request to the department earlier this year, and they've been responding. I think I have almost everything now. I would say at least 90% of what I requested. And that will be, the staffing report will be completed first, and then we'll move on to the reentry report. And then finally, I will complete the oversight coordinator report here, because the next item is actually on our agenda, which would be the task force.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
You want me to talk?
Yeah.
Mike down?
Mike, do you have anyone have any questions on the oversight coordinator's report? Some of the things that she talked about. Go ahead, Mike.
Definitely the unfortunate new death allegedly at OCCC. It's your understanding that's a natural death, a suicide, or other? What do we know the reason?
I don't.
Okay, well that's a big deal, obviously, OCCC. And on the woman's death at WCCC, my understanding is when somebody goes into custody, there's always a service plan, a discharge plan. What is best practice in terms, without blaming anybody or maybe blaming people, what's best practice when someone is older and is sick? What's the normal protocol? You know, Kara?
Well, I think there's a difference between normal protocol and best practice. I mean, I think the best practice, of course, is that if someone is really, and actually maybe Bob Merce is the best person to answer that question on best practice. No.
I think the desire would be to get the person out, but sometimes that's not feasible. And Mike, I know in the past, one of the problems we had is for people who are should get compassionate release, that nursing homes would not accept them because they were coming from corrections. So there was not a viable place to put them in. And often the families don't have the ability to take care of them themselves. But I believe best practice would be to get them into the community. Actual practice may be hindered by that. Bob, could you add anything to this? Turn off your mic, or turn on your mic, Bob, please.
Yeah, thank you. Best practice would be to have these people who the department feels can be released because they are not a danger to society, to have them evaluated early on when they get a diagnosis that meets the rules for release, which is basically they either have a terminal illness or they have an illness that is never going to go away and they are debilitated. And the third reason is that they have a condition that we can't appropriately treat in a correctional facility and they could be treated better outside. It sounds, I wonder about, number one, what the parole board is doing, leaving a woman in who is 78 years old and what the offense was and what the thought was with regard to whether, at this point, certainly a 78-year-old woman who is so sick that she's in the infirmary should be at the very least on a chair to set basis with the parole board, so that as soon as a facility opens up, we can find a place to put her. We can put her in. We don't have time to go through the parole period, so that needs to be looked into. I think, did somebody move to have her released on medical release? If not, why not? Just the question of what is the parole board doing with a 78-year-old woman like this? But secondly, we always have the excuse that there's no place to put them. If she's 78 years old, chances are she doesn't have family around. who are willing to take care of her. That's not unusual. We have two state hospitals, Leahi and Maluhia, both of which are operated by the state. And if you get the woman on to Medicaid, you can save the state a lot of money because you can move her out into one of those two facilities. And the facilities used to be very open to taking these women. I know of two women, one with a brain tumor, one with diabetes and double amputee, leg amputee, who had very, very, very good care at Leahi. And I just don't understand why Leahi is not accepting people coming from the correctional facility when they're like this. If they're 78 years old, a female. I'm sorry, that's my phone. I can't. I don't know how to mute it. But I just shoot. Let me look and see who if it's an emergency. I found the mute button. Okay. Sorry, the mute button doesn't work. I just hung up on him. So anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to comment on this because when I read it, I was really disturbed. And these are the sort of things that shouldn't happen. It's not the really. I just think we need to move faster on these kind of things. We need to follow the administrative rules and see when these people do qualify, that we get them. We get working on right away on finding housing for them. The department has in the past asked me to help with that issue. This is a case where I don't know who the woman was, and certainly not someone I don't think it's not a case that I've ever been involved in. But sometimes finding it hard, but we can't keep saying that, nobody wants them. That happens all too often. It's more difficult with men, but with women, I just don't understand why a state hospital wouldn't accept somebody who's 78 years old and in the infirmary and in hospice. It just should never happen because there's no such thing really as hospice care, I think, in any of our correctional facilities in terms of what hospice really is intended to do and mean. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
There is no doubt that this is a process within the DCR that needs to have further discussion. We do know that there's a possibility that Rep. Hashem will be presenting in some legislation regarding compassionate release. But like everything else that we're doing, commissioners, it's really how do we develop that reentry effort, the transition.
Just said that at times the department has contacted him asking for assistance in getting these people out. Bob just raised his hand again, so be sure to turn on your mic again, Bob.
Yeah. Just to let you know, there was what I considered a serious flaw in the legislation for compassionate release bill last year. I talked to Representative Hashem about it before the bill went to committee, and I said, I think this problem is big enough that we need to fix it and shouldn't pass the bill in this form. And he agreed with me. But I spoke with him last week, I believe it was, and I said, look, I'm going to go over that bill again. I'm going to try and clean it up. I'm going to try and shorten it up and bring it to you. And as soon as you get it, if you and I, meaning Mark and I, agree on it, we should get it over to the Senate Judiciary Committee, get Carl Rhodes to back it. We should get involved with the new parole board. I think we're going to have a new parole commissioner, new parole board chair sometime soon. We should get their approval and in other words, get all of our ducks lined up and get a bill that we all agree is the right one, get the governor's approval of it, get it introduced and get it passed next year.
Okay.
So I'm going to be working on that starting right now.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. The meeting's not over yet, so you have to wait. Thank you, Bob. No further questions. Task force, okay. Task force continues to meet. We have, talking about ACR 23, commissioners, some interesting discussions. We don't want to bring forth anything at this time, but we do have a deadline of August 1st in terms of any type of legislative recommendations and putting together a report. State Council of Government has been very helpful in us in guiding a journey of all the task members on what's happening nationally in regards to the setting of minimum and different models that states are doing, what's happening locally, and has put together some recommendations that we're looking at right now. And we've called a special meeting in July for the task force members all to participate in so that we can come up with some final decisions on where we're going to go in terms of a legislative action or recommendations, and as well as what the report to the legislature will look like. Yeah, and State Council of Governments is providing that report for us. But that's pretty much where we're at right now. Don't want to get into anything more further because there's been a lot of deep discussion. As you know, it is a big topic in regards to the Hawaiian Paroling as Authority on setting the minimum sentencing. So that's our report at this time. Any questions?
And the one addition is if you do want more information about the task force or to watch the last meeting or look at the presentation, it's available on our website. There's a specific tab for the task force.
Yeah. This, fellow commissioners, in your packet that George sent you will see that there is an announcement for a September conference. Is it September? October conference. And let the staff know if you're interested in the 2024 annual NACOLE conference. Some of you may, if you recall, that's the conference that some of us have been going to on a yearly basis. National, what is NACOLE?
National Association of Civilian Oversight for Law Enforcement.
Yeah, for law enforcement. Law enforcement oversight that has a correctional element to it that we participate in as well. And so that's on the table for those of you who want to go to Arizona, Tucson, for that annual conference. With no other questions, let's do everybody that's here right now. I'm opening up for any public comment at this time. Bob?
Thank you. I just have one brief comment. As Kara mentioned, we were both at the Community Design Center community engagement meeting a couple of weeks ago, where they're looking at all aspects of a new model for the new jail. The report is going to come out of the CDC probably in August. And it's going to have a lot of alternative models and recommendations. And, previously the Oversight Commission has recommended I think for 2 years now, that the Department of Public Safety have an advisory committee made up of community stakeholders, helping them with the design process for the new jail. And I got on late today. I didn't hear Tommy Johnson's update. But I know he said in the past that the department and other agencies in the state are working on an RFP. It seems to me that the community ought to be involved with that RFP. We ought to be looking along with the department as to what population group are you really talking about, because there has been a recommendation from the from the consultants who were hired to make the population projections for the new jail that have shown us a way to make the jail probably at least 200 beds smaller. And from the community's perspective, we're wondering why the department isn't following those recommendations and those ideas to build a smaller jail, because at $1 billion jail for 1,300 beds, it comes out to about $700,000 per bed. If you can reduce the cost of the new facility, this is just the construction cost, by 200 beds, you're saving over a couple $100 million for the state. And so why are we building a 1,300 bed facility when somebody has told us, our own consultants have told us there's a better way, and they've shown us the way, and it doesn't even involve bail reform. And so there are issues like that I think are extremely important that the community is concerned about. I meet with a number of groups, a number of different groups. And, we really feel that we ought to have a seat at the table when the RFP is being developed and when the department is making decisions with regard to this new facility, and to make sure that the recommendations and alternative models that are come out of the CDC report are aired in the community, and that we follow up and build the best possible jail that we possibly can, and not build just another updated OCCC where we do custody and control and release people back to the street just in the same or worse condition than they came in. That's the model that I think we're on a path to build. It's going to be a nicer looking facility. It's going to be a little bit more humane when you're in it, but it's going to be the same people for the same reason with the same bad outcomes. So anyway, I would like to urge the commissioners to renew their recommendation to the department that they establish a community advisory committee at the very least, and make the community a full partner in the development of this new facility, so that we know what's going on. We don't have to, and that our input and our voices can be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else raising their hands. I'll just make the call one more time for public testimony. Hearing or seeing none. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday on July 18th, 2024, and that will be on Oahu. George, will that be at our office?
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to remember the office building's name.
State Office Tower.
State Office Tower on Veritania. So we'll get that information out to everybody, but we'll be back on Oahu. Small yay. And then we'll be visiting Oahu Community Correctional Center on the July 18th day.
And today we're going to do a site visit to MCCC.
To Maui, yes. So, with no further questions, commissioners, thank you for being here. Mike, and then bid you all farewell, and thank you for being part of today's meeting. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank